When you write historical fiction, you want to tell a good story with compelling characters, but you also want to get the past right, including, especially, the language. Because of that, many writers of historical fictions use etym-on-line. It's a quick way to determine if a word or phrase would have been used at the time their stories are set. If your early Victorian character talks about having a nervous breakdown or complains about the smog, that kind of anachronism will kick your reader right out of the period, and someone on a message board somewhere will say something mean about you. Writers of historical fiction have been among my most reliable correspondents over the years. They thank me for etym-on-line, but they also notice that it doesn't have everything. It doesn't. Etym-on-line has close to 50,000 entries now, but still there are many things not in it. What do you do then? I want to show you one way to find the answer to the question, would my character in this time and that place use this word or phrase? What I'm going to show you is one of the main ways I determine the first date of a word, the date you see at the top of an entry in etym-on-line. Now a little background. The original Oxford English Dictionary began to be compiled in the late 19th century. The people doing it had to sit down and read through every book they could find and jot down the words in it one by one to begin building their entries. It was a monumental human achievement, and the OED is, and always will be, one of the intellectual triumphs of the English-speaking world. A non-professional like me or you now can trace the dates of a word in a few hours of our spare time. It's simply a different technological world for us for research. Many large digital archives now exist and are freely available to use. One of the biggest and most visible is Google Books. Google hired people in America and Europe to go into the great public libraries and university collections and scan in the books and periodicals, page by page. As of October 2019, Google says it has scanned more than 40 million titles. That would be a significant chunk of the estimated total number of books in print. Then Google published these files online where you and I can see them, page after page of text. Front covers, back covers, book plates, library checkout slips, and all. Sometimes you even find a page scan with the hand of the person who was scanning it inadvertently in the photo. Not only that, Google coupled it with a technology called optical character identification that can identify the words in the texts. And they hooked that to a search engine. So not only did they make the world's biggest textual haystack, they gave you a needle finder to use in it. Well, as Pee Wee Herman perhaps said, into every good news a big but must fall. The but here is, the searches are imperfect. Google doesn't read very well.
Oh, see the deer. Has the deer a little doe? Why, certainly. $2. Oh! Oh! Oh!
In a scan of a battered copy of an old library book in tight print, an 1830 can look like 1880. Luckily, the most common errors in the Google Books search results can be worked around, and I'm going to show you some of the ways I do it. So let's go time traveling. I'm going to walk you through a real-time investigation of a term I want to backdate for use in etym-on-line. From the OED, I have an earliest date of 1868 for Oriental carpet. Let's see if we can beat that. So I open my Google page, and in the upper right corner, you see that little matrix that has those dots, and you go down to the second drawdown window, and up in the corner there is Books, and you click that, and you're in Google Books. I'm going to search for Oriental carpet. I'll put it in quotation marks because I'm looking for the exact phrase, not the two words by themselves. And you click search, and you see your results. And it gives you a list of books, covers of books, and little information about them, and in some cases a citation from the book itself that has the phrase. And there's the dates of the books. They're part of each search result entry. And we're looking for, of course, a particular period, something before 1868. So these more modern books aren't much use. What you want to do is click on where it says anytime and refine that to a custom range. We're trying to find something earlier than 1868, so under 2, I'm going to put 1868. That's the upper date limit for what we're telling Google to search. Google doesn't seem to like a search range that's too narrow, and I find that if you go under 10 years, you miss titles that otherwise show up. If you make it open-ended, you get a mass of results, but more bad hits. For a date in the 19th century, 20 or 40 years is a good range. Let's make it 1830. Click, and there's your results with the dates. At the bottom of the page, like in any Google search, it will show you how much more there is, how many more pages. Only 3 pages here, so that's really not a lot. Generally, you can work off the first page of the results. So here are various publications, 4 different copies of a Chambers Journal piece from 1850, a memoir from 1862. Here's an early date, Godey's magazine. It was a very popular American ladies' magazine. I have a few years of it downstairs bound that were my great-great-grandmother's. It's dated 1839. Let's see if that's right. I'm going to open it in a new window or tab so I can easily get back to the search results if I need them. And there it is, zoomed in. It opens the page of the publication that has the words on it and highlights them in yellow. You'll want to read them in context. Yes, it looks good. Sit upon that oriental carpet of which our boyhood has read in the Arabian fable, etc. It seems it's really talking about a flying carpet or a magic carpet as an element of Arabian Nights fables, which strictly isn't the same thing, but for the sake of investigation, let's go with it a bit. Up here, these 4-point arrows will get rid of the side clutter, but sometimes you'll need that. You can click the domino-looking thing next to them and see the whole file on display in icons showing each page. The page we started on is in a blue box. Click that icon to get back to the larger display of it. The whole book view is useful to scroll quickly through the entire text. For one thing, you can see by the unchanging layout of the pages that it's not a mishmash of files. For another, it is how you get to the beginning, which is where the date always is. Is this really 1839? Just because Google says this is 1839 doesn't mean it is. So in the inside front cover, there's the library plate, Penn State as it turns out, and you can confirm it's the same publication. The Lady's Book is the formal name of Godey's then, and there on the frontispiece is 1839. With a bound magazine, sometimes you can start at your page with the hit and just scroll up a few pages till you get to the title page for that edition and find the year and the month. You might have noticed that this is page 11, not of the whole book, but of this edition of Godey's. And scrolling up through some romantic prose and over-elaborate poetry, we arrive at the start of the edition, July 1839, in good Roman numerals. Sarah Josepha Hale, who was editing Godey's at the time, is notable now not only as a pioneering female editor, but as the author of the rhyme we know as Mary Had a Little Lamb, and as probably the person most responsible for making Thanksgiving a national holiday in the United States. So we go back to the search page, armed with our new date. 1839 is our new starting point. Custom range. Let's try 1800 to 1839. Here you start to hit bad dates, and not that kind of bad date. The first 2 books in the results are 2 editions of the same book about a ship's mutiny. They claim to be 1828, but the binding on the first one already looks to me more like 1910. Open it up. It's at the back of the book in a blurb about another book by the same publisher. And again, it seems to be talking about what we might call a flying carpet or a magic carpet, but let's go on. So look at the book whole file. See the hand of the Google temp who scanned it like I told you? Nice rings. The title page. looks authentic. It also looks nothing like the text we were seeing down on the page with the hit. Go down a few pages, still looks like an old book. And you see, finally, that this is a reprint. A notice in a font that didn't exist in 1828 tells you that this is a modern edition preserving the original title page, which fooled Google. So go back to search results in search of a good date. Here's the Athenaeum, a literary magazine of the day, 1828. Charles Wentworth Dilke, a friend of Keats, was the publisher of it, and it survived into the 20th century when it published Virginia Woolf and T.S. Eliot, among others. Open it. The look of the page is right, and it seems to be talking about an actual carpet, not a flying magic one. Bound editions of magazines often carry the monthly publication date right on the page. And there it is. If you want more confirmation, you can go up to the title page. We stand now at 1828 and are ready for a third swing at a date. Let's go crazy and push it back to 1780. And there's a hit, apparently, from 1800. A view of the commerce of Greece. Or is it a hit? The page looks right for the times. The title page has the date. But is this the same sense? It is this mode which is peculiar to the Turkey carpets, which distinguishes the Oriental carpet manufactory from the European. It's pretty clear to me that this passage is using Oriental, the adjective, not as a style of carpet, but in reference to a way of manufacturing carpets in the Orient and contrasting it with the European way of doing that work. I say no, that's not the thing we're looking for. But the passage offers a valuable hint to a historical writer because in two places here it references Turkey carpets, which I'll bet was what they called then what we now call Oriental carpets. If we had time, we could chase that down. It's not enough to simply see the date. You have to read in context. I'll give you an example of why simply getting a hit on a date isn't enough. I was trying to backdate French fries. The general supposition was that it was a food and a name the Americans had picked up in France in World War I. So I was looking to see if there was something before 1917, and I got a hit from 1914 in Google Books. This was it. It's 1914, all right, but it's a page from a who's who of American women sort of book that lists them alphabetically, and it's the page that has as the first entry Helen Cornell French, and the last entry is Emma Riddell Fries, I assume that's pronounced, so that at the head of the page, listing it the way they do in encyclopedic entries, it says French-Fries. To Google, that's the same as what I was looking for, but it is emphatically not French fries. So if we knock out the 1800 date for Oriental carpet, that leaves 1828 in the Athenaeum as the earliest date in the results, which means 1828 stands as the earliest date for Oriental carpet as a term in English for a kind of carpet based on this search. Maybe it existed before that in an unpublished letter. Maybe it was used in conversation before that. We have no way to know based on this. But we pushed it back 40 years. Not bad for a few minutes' work. Pushed it into the range of Andrew Jackson and Charlotte Bronte. Let me show you one more thing. If I search Oriental carpet without a date range, if I search for any time, the hits are going to show a lot of modern books. Most of these are no preview files. That's probably due to copyright issues. There's been a lot of concern among authors and publishers about Google Books basically giving away their text. In a snippet view, you can see the snippet of text with the word or phrase you're searching, but you can't see the rest of the book, the rest of the page, the whole file, so you can't be sure of the date. I never use those in Edam Online, even when I suspect they're right. If I can't connect the usage with the date, it's not something I will use. We saw one kind of bad date in that search with the Mutiny books. Here are a few others. I know this one because I've hit it so often, so I'll just call up the book by name. Herbert George Wells, H.G. Wells, was born in 1866 and died in 1946. He was a futurist who apparently coined atomic bomb and outer space and time traveling. He published a novel called Marriage. It's not one of his best, and Google Books frequently offers it up when you're searching for words from the age of Napoleon or Wordsworth. The words are indeed in the book, but Marriage was published in 1912. Google thinks it was published in 1798. I have no idea why. If I search within the book, I see no hits for 1798 anywhere in the text, but notice it's only a snippet view. Curiously, Google seems to think this book, which it believes to be from 1798, is under copyright protection. But if I search for the same book in an anytime search, I can find it with the proper 1912 date and read the whole thing. Incidentally, the other hit on that search results page also is a dud, and another example of something I warned about. The General Magazine and Historical Chronicle that mentions Wells and his book is in fact from 1941, but the magazine boasted its venerableness by keeping the original form of the cover page down to the 1741 date, and that fooled Google. Here's another one I know well. I've hit it dozens of times when I'm trying to search for words and phrases from the era of Queen Anne and Dryden. It's the 1698 streetcar. Boy, wouldn't H.G. Wells have liked to have known about that. Really, it's a monthly journal published in the first decade of the last century by the Labor Union of Streetcar Operators. It's actually an enjoyable publication, but it's not 17th century. No human being with any sense could look at this page and think it was. Can you see why a computer could make this error? It doesn't carry a year date, only the month. But the number of the streetcar in the charming illustration is number 1698. Sometimes it's not Google's fault. When publishers use Roman numerals, the typographers sometimes slipped up. Here are two examples. This is a collection of wartime essays, and the war in question is World War I. It was published in 1918, as the dates within the book make clear, but the publishers or printers, probably still used in the 19th century style, made it 1818. This educational theory book is from 1836, but again the publisher left off a C, and it comes out as 1736. So that's a quick look at how to use Google Books to find dates, and also to get lost in the warren of rabbit holes that lead you to surprising and unexpected places in the history of publication. Personally, I particularly like the old trade and union journals like the streetcar one. I'll leave you with a few others you can come across in that era. Have fun.